session with David on Friday, we talked about the relationship between Oversoul, higher self, and human incarnate. And
Did you say human internet?
incarnate, just being a human here in physical form.
Incarnate.
Yeah,
Ah,
incarnate. Yes. So I don't feel as though I have a very it's a very basic understanding of that relationship, and just if you could comment more on it to broaden that understanding, I might think it might be interesting for all of us to hear.
on which platform would you prefer?
Um,
Higher self, over soul, or incarnation, as you said?
well, I guess the what the question for me most predominantly would be is the relationship between the me here, my higher self, and oversoul.
Let's piece this answer together. The relationship between you, your higher self, and your oversoul.
Yeah.
This is a very difficult subject to talk about in a linear fashion. It would be easier to describe the edges of a 10,000 piece puzzle. But we will make some attempt at such a topic. Let us begin with your oversoul and become more comfortable. Your oversoul is your God self. This part of you that shines the most bright. It is an accumulation of all of your experiences that you have ever held within the experience of your life. And that experience of your fractals, alters, and other perceptions of reality that you may have perceived, held, or done. This means that in all timelines, in all dimensions, in all realities, you are connected to this one oversoul. Like a jellyfish swimming in the ocean, each of the tentacles, this is where it becomes complicated. Each of the tentacles is as a branch in your experience. But on each tentacle of the manowar, or perhaps a jellyfish, are nematocysts. And these look like small fibers, and that corkscrew outwardly to sting you. But regardless, we just want to explain what they are. Now, these fine fibers that are on uh, throughout the strand of the manowar or the jellyfish are like experiences that you will have in your life. Each one is different, and there are a million or more strands per jellyfish tendril. Now, we do not want you to calculate how many that would add up to be, because this is where it becomes complicated. Humans' understanding and analogies and the way we speak is not secure enough to produce a mnemonic or perhaps learning strategy to explain this better than we have yet to this point. Now, your higher self, your oversoul, you, these are all interconnected and are the same thing. And yet, you and your higher self is more of a singularity in comparison to your oversoul. Your oversoul is like a spider's web, the center of the spider's web. One moment, please. Each branch of the spider's web that moves from the central point divides itself and divides itself and divides itself. And when it's divided enough, it creates the complete web, which is your experience of what you call life. Now, each strand of this web represents a different dimension. As it moves outward from the center, it drops down in dimension with each band of the spider's web. Remember that the spider that has created the web is like God, or is God. It depends on your particular circumstance. And because of this, God can change the spider web to look different if it wants, which will change the whole context of your reality in your experience. Now we know that we have lost several of you already, but we will continue onward with this process. So it is cataloged into the YouTube, the human collective consciousness of artificial intelligence, we will say. So we apologize if this is lengthy, but it is an important concept to understand. And although how we are expressing it is only a fragment of the density of knowledge that is being expressed, it will give you some understanding, we hope, even if it is from repetitive watchings of the same program on YouTube. Now, where does your higher self fit in with this oversoul? Well, to understand that, one would need to think of the spider's web. And if you're familiar with a spider's web, it most often is spread out on a single plane. It is rather flat when looked at from a particular angle. But to the north and to the south of that, there is your higher self. And one higher self is lower than the other higher self. So now we would like you to imagine another spider web that is different, and it is woven by a different spider, and it is approximately 1 inch away from the original spider web. And there is another spider web 1 inch below this spider web, creating 3 spider webs. Each one of these spider webs, as we stated, is different in every way. But yet they are woven by the same spider. Does this make any sense?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very well. So one spider can create many different parallel webs. And each web is not designed to trap flies. It is designed to create reality, that experience which you are partaking in as a human, or a galactic, or cow. It does not matter. This is the web of life, and it is a fractalized component of the universe. And this is all that we will speak of this for now, because this is a long and lengthy conversation, and we wish to get to other topics today. But thank you for the question.
I interpret it as like we are all expressions of source, and for example, each one of you is a reflection back to me, a part of me. So I can learn from that and expand further from those things that I'm learning and observing from each one of you, that you're all me, having a different physical experience, a different perspective, but still, we're still all the same in the end. Yeah, something like that.
Very cool. Yes, we would elaborate on that concept further. We would say each of you are a reflection of Isabella, as said, and that would be true. Just as each of you are a reflection of David or anyone else who is here. Now, each of these reflections is like one single strand of the spider's web until it continues onward with the next piece of string. And each piece of string, if looked under a magnifying glass, has different smaller fibers that branch off. And each of these fibers that branch off are like friends that you will meet in these lives. Each segment of web is different, like a different life, by a different individual, which holds every single experience that that individual will hold within themselves in that particular incarnation. But the dimensions are variable dependent on the elevation of the spider's web. The higher dimensional experiences will be on the more northern spider's web. The lower dimensional experiences will be on the more southern spider's web. And so continues in the web of life. But remember, spiders' webs can be influenced by frequency and vibration. And so can your experience. So when one breathes on the spider web which you are living on and experiencing your everyday life, it will cause you to have a reverberation effect. And that reverberation effect will affect all of the different timelines that are occurring on your web of experience. And as it does, it creates an echo, which is reflected back to you. So one might say that life as a human is like being blown on by God. The breath of God causes the vibrations in the spiderweb to begin. And without any movement in the spider's web, there is no life. The program does not run without the web moving in some way. And it is always moving from a vibration or frequency or oscillation.
One last thing, when we spoke about your self, your higher self, and your oversoul, so Cal would be the higher self to David. And then are there other higher selves in between that and the oversoul, which you can channel or connect to?
Yes.
And then essentially, depending on where you're at, your consciousness, can you connect or channel your oversoul?
Yes, we can, but we will not be doing that.
Is that something just not beneficial for a human to do, even if they can or they can learn how or they're allowed to?
Well, it is most definitely beneficial, but it is a far reach even for ourselves to reach the oversoul. So,
Is it something?
Please continue.
Is it something that Cal or David aspire to do in this lifetime?
Not necessarily, but it is something that is interesting to think about.
So when David says there's another person above Cal, there's still layers in between the higher self and the oversoul in which a person can connect to or channel to?
Yes.
Is it all different for everybody, or we all have the same number of layers between a higher self and an oversoul?
Each individual is unique, dependent on their connection with their oversoul, and that connection to the higher self is also unique, as the difference in the spider webs vary, or perhaps snowflakes, if you wish, vary from snowflake to snowflake.
Thank you.
You're welcome.